Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having me here. It's my great pleasure to share with you about the health and well-being and sustainable development. And this session is a good start to see the SDG as a global agenda and see how it links to the UHC. As Dr. Taxpon mentioned at the beginning, the sustainable development has become a modern central public policy framework which require effort beyond health sector. And in this section, there will be two parts. First, I will give you a brief presentations about SDG, and then the discussion with Dr. Virod. Here is the outline of the first part. I would like to start with a brief information on what Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs is. Then I will explain the interlinkages between the SDG 3 and other SDG. Finally, I will touch on the COVID-19 impact on SDGs achievement. First of all, I would like to start with the concept of sustainable development. Sustainable development has been defined in many ways, but the most frequently definition is from our Common Future, which is the report of the World Commissions on Environment and Development. It defines sustainable development as development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the abilities of future generations to meet their own needs. And in the report, it mentioned the numerous concerns that has been raised in previous decades from few key works, such as the silent spring, which is about the pesticides and insects, the strategies of the commons, the blueprints of the survival, and the limits to growth report. Basically, the concept touched upon human activity is having severe and negative impacts on the planet. And that pattern of growth and development would be unsustainable if they continue unchecked. And if you have heard about the word Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs or Global Goals or 2030 goals, it's refer the same thing. It was adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. At its heart are the 17 SDGs, which are an urgent call for action by all countries. The 17 goals, all to be achieved by 2030, which is 9 years ahead. We can see here on the screen the different goals in different colors show different themes and issues. For each goal, there are specific targets. Within 17 goals, there are 169 targets, which are pretty ambitious agenda. And the achievement of the goals is monitored by 247 indicators. And some key points that I would like to highlight about the SDGs. First, the UN conducted many consultative meetings at national and global level between 2012 and 2015. There were nearly 10 million people worldwide involved in the process of the agenda development. As articulated in the 2013 agenda, never before have world leaders pledged common actions and endeavor across such a broad and universal policy agenda. But it should be noted that the UNGA adopted the SDGs agenda as a resolution. Unlike international treaties, resolutions are not legally binding, but countries are expected to take ownership and establish national framework for follow-up the progress made in implementing the goals and for the achievement. Also, the SDG built upon the success of 8 Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, agreed upon in 2000 to stop extreme poverty by 2015, while the SDG aims to go further to end all forms of poverty with broader targets, including economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. In the right side, it shows the 3 pillars of sustainability: economic, social, and environmental pillar. The new goals recognize that ending poverty must go hand in hand with strategies that build economic growth and addresses a range of social needs, including education, health, social protections, and job opportunities, while taking climate change and environmental protection. In addition, MDGs mainly apply to developing countries. The SDGs are universally applicable. They call for actions by all countries, no matter their current development status, to promote prosperity while protecting the planet. And as mentioned in the previous slide on the 3 pillars of sustainability, it is crucial to harmonize 3 core elements. The goals provide a framework for shared actions called 5P principle for SDGs. For people, planets, and prosperity to be implemented by all countries and all stakeholders acting in cooperative partnership. For the first P, people, it is determined to end poverty and hunger in all their form and dimension, and to ensure that all human beings can fulfill their potential in dignity and equality and in a healthy environment. Linked to the goal 1 to 6 and social sector. And for the second P on prosperity, it is determined to ensure that all human beings can enjoy prosperous and fulfilling lives, and that economic, social, and technological progress occur in harmony with nature, which is linked to the goal 7 to 10 and economic sector. And the third P on planet. The planet must be protected from degradation, including through sustainable consumption and production, managing its natural resources, and taking urgent actions on climate change, which is linked to the goal 11 to 15 on environmental sector. And the fourth P on peace is determined to foster peaceful, just, and inclusive society. It said there can be no sustainable development without peace, and no peace without sustainable development. And the last P, partnership. This goal is a cost-cutting goal. It's aimed to mobilize the means of the SDG implementation to global partnerships based on a spirit of strengthening global solidarity. An SDG agenda sets out 5 key opportunities for the development. There are, first, inclusive development. The SDG will engage multiple stakeholders at all levels of the society. No one is left behind. Second, universal development. As mentioned earlier, the MDGs set out goals mainly for developing countries, to which developed countries add assistance through finance and technology. In contrast, the SDGs are universal goals that can apply to all countries. Third, integrated development. The SDG agenda moves away from silo approaches to development and promote the integration. The development must balance between social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And the fourth one on locally focused development. Local authority and community are responsible for the realizations of the goals at local scales. A bottom-up approach can be successful to direct contact with communities. And the fifth one, the technology-driven development, rapid technological change, particularly in ICT and data, has a significant potential to speed the global development and economic convergence. I will move to focus on SDG 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. There are 13 targets in SDG 3, which cover several groups of targets. First, targets that related to the unfinished MDG agenda, such as maternal, child, and reproductive health and communicable disease. The left side box show the 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.7. And second, new targets, including NCDs and social determinants, show in the middle box, refer to target 3.4, 3.6, and 3.9. And the last one, the target related to health system and available and affordable medicines and vaccine, 3.A to A.D. You can see the target 3.8 about the UHC. This is an overarching target for SDG 3. And the target can also be categorized into types of targets. For SDG 3.1 to 3.9, there are outcome targets. And SDG A to SDG D, there are means of implementations of the targets. Each of the targets has an indicator to monitor the progress and achievement of SDG implementation. For example, SDG 3.1 on maternal and mortality. The target is by 2030, reduce the global maternal mortality ratio to less than 70 per 100,000 live births. And it's comprised of two indicators, including 3.1.1 on maternal mortality ratio and 3.1.2 on proportions of births attended by skilled birth personnel. And I would like to reiterate that the integrated development is one of the 5 SDG principles that I mentioned earlier. The 17 SDG are integrated. They recognize that action in one area will affect outcome in others. For example, a country's ability to combat hunger is directly connected to its agricultural system, its strategy for rural development, economic and income growth, management of natural resources, and the health of its populations. And this figure shows the interlinkage of health in all SDG. Perhaps it is similar to health in all policy that we are familiar with. I cannot walk through all 17 goals, so I just want to make an example on few SDG. For SDG 1, no poverty, we should prioritize the health needs of the poor. And for SDG 2, zero hunger, our work on health sector should address the causes and consequences of malnutrition. And another SDG is SDG 12 on responsible consumption production. Antibiotics must be used responsibly to combat AMR in humans and animals. And I would like to touch upon the COVID-19 impact on SDG achievement. We cannot deny that the COVID-19 pandemic has triggered health, social, and economic crisis worldwide. And this year, the UN launched the SDG report on the view from the pandemic. The information showed that the COVID-19 derailed the progress and achievements of the SDGs. And for SDG 3, the COVID-19 has interrupted one or more essential health services and poses a major health threat beyond the disease itself. Available data from few countries show that pandemic has shortened life expectancy. And a decade of progress in reproductive, maternal, and child health could be reversed by the pandemic. And the current COVID-19 undoubtedly reaffirmed the importance of UHC in ensuring the universal access to response intervention, including testing, tracing, and treating for everyone, including free vaccination. However, the main obstacle to understand the true magnitude and impact of COVID-19 pandemic is the health system is a lack of data. Globally, only 62% of countries had a death registration system that was at least 75% complete data in 2015 to 2019. And this figure shows a causal loop diagram describing the COVID-19 impacts, which were triggered by two major originators of causes. First, the pandemic itself, and the second, the originator is the movement restrictions. And 5 color reflect the pandemic impact on 5 groups of SDGs. First, the green color demonstrated impact on health. Basically, an increase in COVID-19 case interrupt the provisions of essential health services. Low health service capacity resulted in high unmet healthcare need, can cause high mortality. And the second, purpose on education. The COVID-19 also disrupt educational system. Due to school closure, the drop-off rate increased, the school completion rate decreased, leading to low level of learning outcome. And the third one on orange, on the food and nutrition. For the food system, low availability of food As a result of movement restriction, led to higher food price, combined with job loss, increased the household risks of food insecurity. And in pink color, on economic and employment, due to the travel restriction and a fall in economic activity, the shock to labor market was translated into significant downward adjustments to working hours, underemployment, and unemployment rate. And the last one on the blue color on the environment, the COVID-19 could be the result of the growing threat from zoonotic in emerging infectious disease, with the invasion to wildlife habitats by human activity and increased exposure to new pathogens. But due to the travel restriction, global daily carbon dioxide emission has dropped. Any significant reductions of air pollution as measured by PM 2.5 was observed in many countries such as India and China. And from this pathway, it's reaffirmed the statement that Dr. Taksapon mentioned in the beginning on health is a precondition for and an outcome and indicator of all three dimensions of sustainable development. SDGs are interlinked. Health and well-being of the populations and health system are affected directly by the pandemic, while the impacts on prosperity, education, planetary health, and food insecurity are indirectly affected by pandemic response, notably social and travel restriction. And in summary, please observe that SDG can be an opportunity for everyone to make the world a better place. It is a universal policy agenda. Whatever issue or area you are working with, you can embrace the SDG into your work or even into your life. And we should not limit our perspective with the 17 goals, targets, or indicator, but we should realize the values of sustainable development concept, the leave no one behind, or the health equity for all, or the integrations of economy, environment, and society with clearly reflects that connectedness and synergistic influence of social, economic, and environmental determinants on the health of people. And UHC is a crucial entry point to achieving SDG. The COVID pandemic fostered the importance of SDG. The strong and resilient national health system and UHC are the foundations for effective response to pandemic to the public health emergencies. And this is all my slide. Thank you very much.